Welcome to a New Human Podcast. This show is a place where we find out who we truly are and what we strive to be. Listen as we unravel current history and make our way to a new beginning. I am your host, Justin Klein. So today on the New Human Podcast, we have Sir William Bill Pechman, who's in the house. Bill has been on the show a couple different times now.
Yes, sir.
One, just your individual. So for all you new listeners out there, if you'd want to dive into that, that's more of Bill's story of how he got to where he is now.
And getting to know each other.
Yeah, for sure. But today is more about kind of diving into some, not maybe fun.
We'll try to sprinkle in a little comedy because I always say you've got to have a little humor on your journey.
Oh, for sure. But some interesting conversations. And with that being said, Bill, on our last podcast, you were talking about you were a police officer for 24 years?
Yes, sir.
24 years. And now you are this Reiki master teacher. And one of the biggest questions I had was how you juggled life, how you would be a police officer and go through maybe a certain traumatic bad event. And from there, go home to your family, or you're doing a Reiki session or whatever it is. How do you shift those energies or not bring something home that's not yours, so you're just not polluting, your environment at home?
That is such a good question.
Yeah.
And I think that the key is learning how to separate the two, whether it's work or a traumatic event. Being able to separate that from your home. But before you get to that point, there's a couple of things that are very, very important. One of them is healthy communication with your spouse and your family. They have to understand what you're doing, and you have to understand the dynamics of their life. And one thing that I like to say is with your spouse, you share with your spouse. You share your experiences with them, and with your kids you filter, and depending on their age is the degree of
the filter.
So you have to have the communication, but then you also have to train your mind in a way so that you can separate the event or work with home. And the only way that you can separate those two is through compartmentalization. And if you think of a filing cabinet, there's a reason why we have filing cabinets. You don't see, you walk into a doctor's office and you don't see all the papers scattered on the lobby floor.
Yeah, they're organized.
They're very, very organized. And it becomes a matter of your work file. You have a traumatic event or a work file, and you pull out the drawer that has all the crap in it, and you put that in that file and close it. And then you pull out the top file, and it might be focusing on the kids, that sort of thing. And with the same laser focus that you gave to the traumatic event. So while I'm experiencing this horrible thing at work, I have to be laser focused on that to do my job. You then take that same laser focus and you focus on your family or your kids, and you're not thinking about, your mental focus is now on your kids because there's a different brain chemistry that's happening. You're actually using a different part of your brain when you focus on, when you ground yourself, in the physical world. You're noticing color, you're noticing sounds. And the more you can do that and focus on that physical world in a very specific one-minded way, then that's what you got to do.
Right. Just switching that. Yeah, that's interesting because I was trying to put myself in your shoes too. Like if I'm at work, or even all of our listeners that are listening to this, we all have certain times in our day, maybe not as extreme as a police officer, but shout out to like the nurses or the doctors that somebody comes in that just, lost an arm or something like that. you
Or if you're
know?
driving home from work one day
Mhm.
and you come across a horrible accident, and
Mhm.
you have to help the people
Mhm.
involved. You're not a cop. You're not a emergency room technician.
Mhm.
You're just a person, driving home, and you find yourself in the middle of this horrible situation. Same
Mhm.
thing.
What happens when they? Because now you said that, even the accident, I had a friend of mine, his girlfriend, actually, that happened to her,
Yeah.
and she was just a normal day-to-day 9 to 5 job or something. I don't know what she did exactly, but never really experienced anything traumatic coming up to a guy that got hit on a motorcycle.
Yeah.
And so she got out and called 911, and I think he was already dead when she got there. But it stuck around with her for months. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
she just wasn't even the same person for, a month or 2 because seeing something like that just wrecked her. I get what you're saying, like, you did your things with shutting off, and being dialed in and focused, when you're at work and then when you're at home with the kids, but somebody that keeps playing that loop, where it's like, "Oh my god, I can't get his
Mm-hmm.
face out of my head."
Yes. Yes.
Do you have any other tips or tricks or, that
Absolutely.
yeah.
Um, I like to use the example of training your mind
Mhm.
in the same way that an athlete trains their body.
Yeah.
So, training your mind to resist a traumatic event. An athlete begins their training regiment,
Mhm.
and they gradually increase the intensity over time, and then eventually they are training at the level that they're going to compete at, so that their practices become just like a game, only it's the scrimmage, and they're going 100% and they're clashing heads. And that's how, and then so that when it comes to the Super Bowl,
Mhm.
they're performing at their peak level. Now, if you take that same athlete and uh, and they do absolutely zero training in the off season, and then during the season they do zero training during the season, and then all of a sudden they find themselves in the Super Bowl,
Mhm.
um, and then they compete. Well, the first situation, the athlete the next day is going to be bumped and bruised and sore,
Mhm.
but it's going to feel like a really intense practice session. It'll feel like I just did a really, really intense scrimmage with the other side. The second case where the person did not prepare at all, that person is going to probably be very, very injured, and they may even end up in the hospital.
Mhm.
And I like to think of trauma. Trauma affects the untrained mind in the same way that extreme physical exertion affects the untrained body. So that the untrained body is going to get injured and may possibly have to go to the hospital. The untrained mind that's where PTSD comes from,
Mhm.
if that makes any
It
sense.
does. That's a
And because it's the shock, it's not the trauma of the event that creates the PTSD in somebody, because the trauma occurred in the 3D world.
right.
The PTSD is all up here.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
No, I do. I'm following you. Like it's imprinted essentially on their mind. Where in the beginning you were saying you could uh, put all those files in the cabinet, and categorize them. Where this is just like bam, stuck there, and it's not really organized. Like you were saying with the athlete, he's organized, he's working and taking care of himself and doing all this. But when it happens, all of a sudden there's no organization, so it just imprints on the mind.
And that's what causes the PTSD
Mm,
right there,
yeah,
because it's the shock.
the shock.
It's the unprepared.
Mhm.
Something happens that's completely unexpected, and I am absolutely unprepared. And then what happens to our brain biology when that happens? Fear comes in,
Mm.
and there's a certain chemical release in your brain that happens when you feel fear and you're
Yeah.
terrified. And that's where that fear comes from.
Mm.
Training your mind, let me unpack this here for just a second. You know, if you take what comes your way as a pattern that is woven into the fabric of your destiny. Um, Marcus Aurelius wrote, what were his words? Um, Begin each day by telling yourself that today I'm going to meet insolence, disrespect, and resistance, so that when that arrives, I won't panic. I
Mhm.
won't be shocked because I've already mapped it out. I've already planned. It's
Mhm.
it's 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 the athlete that is prepared for the Super Bowl as opposed to the one that didn't prepare. If
Yeah.
you have already mentally prepared for this, and the more you do that, the more you build up your psychological muscle memory in the same way that an athlete builds up their biological muscle memory.
Mhm.
If an athlete, you know, if they train and they keep doing their task over and over again, eventually that task becomes a part of their neurobiology.
Mhm.
It's there's a lot of things to unpack here.
Yeah.
So in the 3D world, an action will always trump reaction. When something happens to you in the 3D world, your eyes have to see it, and then the eyes send that information to your brain, and then the brain processes that information and then sends the signal to the body for the body to respond in a certain way. That's a lot of steps.
Mhm.
The athlete trains the boxer, the karate master doing their katas.
Mhm.
They train their body it so that when their eyes see this event, the neurobiology already exists so that their eyes tell their body to react rather than their brain telling their body to react,
Yeah.
because it's the brain where the PTSD resides.
Mhm.
And that's where the mental training, you know, comes in, and you know, training your mind. The more you train your mind, the stronger it's going to be when facing adversity, because it's going to happen in the real world. I mean, we can tell ourselves that we're not going to face any adversity, but we know that we're going to.
100%.
You know, that's, you know, so much of the problems that people run into is that they try to, you know, they fight reality. You know,
Mhm.
they uh this is the situation, and they are going to try to tell themselves that this isn't the situation. Does that
Mhm.
make any sense?
It does. I mean, and I was trying to like, well, I got a couple questions based on
I know I
everything you
went
just.
off on a whole bunch of
No,
different. I was not.
no, it's
I
perfect.
should have come more prepared
I
with.
know, I love it. I love, well, that's why we're doing this. I like just flowing and going and see where we go here,
Yeah.
because some of the questions I had, or one was in particular, so training our mind, okay? I was thinking about training my mind and just being like the word mindful, mindfulness comes to me, where I'm aware of my thoughts, you know, of what
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say, how I'm going to react. I'm watching, you know, certain thoughts, but also I'm thinking of the traumatic events. Like we could go back to, you know, that person that get hit on the motorcycle. Now, if you were saying the mind needs to be trained, can you train the mind without having to see something so horrific?
Absolutely.
Or, you know, to where that situation, we're just going to use that situation, the motorcycle guy. Now, maybe he had never seen anything like that happen before. But with this mind training, like what steps could he use if that was his first traumatic event that he had seen, to be less traumatic? Are you following me?
Absolutely.
You know, where
Absolutely.
it's like, I don't like, I'm thinking of, well, if I need to train my mind to see traumatic events, like, do I go on YouTube and, you know, watch horrific things? And it's like, I
No,
don't want to do that. No, no, no. Yeah. So
that's
it's
not.
like, how does, and that's what I'm trying to, for the listeners out there, how does one, when they get in that spicy situation, how does one not hold on to that PTSD in their mind? What are some training activities that they could do to release that PTSD, quicker?
Well, I think we're talking about a couple things because the PTSD is what we're training our mind to resist.
Okay.
That's the event. So the training is not experiencing, although psychologically, it's been well established that how you, as an example, a phobia.
Mhm.
Let's say I'm absolutely deathly afraid of getting in an elevator. So, what a therapist might suggest, in the same way that an athlete trains, that you may, in the first week, you may just look at the elevator door and you don't go in. And then the next week you may walk up to the elevator, push the button and the door opens, and then that's enough. And then, you're gradually getting into the elevator.
Yeah.
Slow, gradual exposure
Mhm.
to the event is what builds your muscle. You don't go into the gym and start throwing on,
Right.
200 pounds and
That's what
start
I was
curling
thinking
that.
of. It's a slow
Um,
dance.
but so that's the training aspect of it. And we'll talk about how to process through once, if you're experiencing PTSD, or if you're with somebody
Mhm.
that is experiencing PTSD, some of the things that we can try to do to help them through that. But in terms of the training aspect of it,
Right.
yeah, no, you don't have to expose yourself to the worst of the worst,
Right.
but you have to train your mind. uh, One example would be the book Man's Search for Meaning by Victor Davis, or I'm sorry, not Victor Davis Hanson. He's a history guy. Viktor Frankl.
Mhm.
Viktor Frankl was at Auschwitz in World War II, and he survived Auschwitz. And then he later became a psychiatrist. And he studied trauma. He studied this sort of thing. And, you know, one of the things that he talks about is happiness, or I can't think of a better word than happiness, but that good state of being.
Right.
Happiness is a very, very fragile state of being. Happiness alone is very fragile. To make happiness strong, or that sense within you, purpose and meaning are essential. In fact, purpose and meaning are required for life itself.
Mhm.
Happiness that is derived from purpose and meaning is strong. You have a purpose and you have meaning, and you are doing something good that you believe in. If your happiness is derived from likes on Instagram, or your social status when you go to the party, that happiness is very, very fragile. So now the question is, how do you attain purpose and meaning when you're in a concentration camp?
Mhm.
How do you
Mhm.
do that? How do you find that? How do you attain that purpose and meaning when you're experiencing what that man experienced?
Mhm. Faith, I mean, just a higher power, you know what I mean? Yeah, I don't it's crazy to think about, when you put yourself in somebody's
That's a
shoes like that.
Oh, absolutely. That's and it's a book that and we've talked about this before for my Reiki level 2 students.
Mhm.
I have them read, Man's Search for Meaning.
Mm.
It's a book that has nothing to do with Reiki,
Mhm.
and yet has absolutely everything to do with Reiki.
Right.
And anyway, that would be an example of training your mind. You don't have to. How do we spend our mental time training? Are we reading the Stoics? Are we speaking with somebody who is interesting and knows a little bit about the topic? Are we mindlessly scrolling through the internet? You
Mhm.
know, one is training your mind the right way, and one's not is training it the wrong way.
Right.
The long distance athlete is not going to go into the gym and start powerlifting,
Right.
and the power lifter is not going to spend all their time running. You have to balance your training. A boxer who doesn't balance their training, they may be big and strong and be able to do a knockout blow, but then they run out of gas in the second round. Whereas the one that's very, very nimble and can go all day long, they don't have that knockout blow.
Yeah.
So training your mind properly is very, very important as well.
Right. Wow. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it really does, it just I'm thinking about when you were saying scrolling though, like how many traps there are for humanity out there where I enjoy reading, I really do. I love reading a book versus watching TV, but then I can get a text message or something on my phone from an email. And then next thing you know, I'm looking at it and then I click on this link. And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, okay, whoa, stop looking at this right now,
Yeah.
and I can't help but notice, like, when I'm out in public, how many people go to a restaurant or on their
It's
phones and they're
sad.
doing
It's
that,
sad.
so it could be difficult to train your mind when that's what you have going on, where it's just, it's keeping your mind going, but it's just foggy, in
Mhm.
my opinion. It's not clear, you
Absolutely.
know? So, yeah. Wow, that's great. I wanted to go into, we've been talking a lot about how training the mind, training the body, but then, and we talked a little bit off air with the body too, and I want to know what your thoughts are on this. So when you go through that event and it's painful on your mind and you're stuck in that loop, but
Mhm.
then your body, you know, tenses up, it starts to shake, um, where you're feeling every emotion, but now it's almost with the mind and then the body, it's like it's getting stored in the body.
Mhm.
How does one, regulate or move through that? Do you have any tips or
Well
insight on that?
well, what's going on in your mind is, there's this loop,
Mhm.
and it's, the squirrels are running
Yeah, I'm
around
thinking
in
of a
your mind.
track field.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got all of these squirrels, running around in your mind, and what you have to do is you have to break the loop, and
Mhm.
there's a couple different ways to do that. Um, if you're so entranced in the loop and you just can't get out of it, and all you can think about is all of these horrible things, and you can't even get out of your headspace, the first thing you have to do is think about your brain biology. You got to start working a different part of your brain,
Mhm.
because right now your focus is on the ethereal, it's on your thoughts, it's on the what ifs.
Mhm.
What if I should have done this? What if?
Right.
You have to break that loop.
Mhm.
So ground yourself in the physical world. As an example, when you breathe, so take a moment and you breathe.
Mhm.
What does it feel like to breathe? Does it feel good? Does it feel exhilarating? Just taking a breath, even in this moment of tension, and then you focus on the feeling. How does that feel to breathe? And then that might bring you to your feet and this very comfortable fuzzy rug that we have and how that feels on my feet. What I'm doing is I'm using a different part of my brain,
Yeah.
because my brain has to work. It has to focus on something completely different. Like, oh my goodness, Justin, this is like the coolest display right
Yeah.
here. How did you have that done?
Mhm.
I'm using an entirely different part of my brain.
Right.
And then it kind of gets back to the file cabinet,
Yeah.
example, so that I'm going to, with that same laser focus that I was focused while I was experiencing the event, I'm going to laser focus on my breathing,
Right.
and I'm not going to focus on the act of breathing. I've been doing that my whole life. I'm going to focus on something different. How does it make me feel? How does my
Feel.
breath make me feel?
Mhm.
I'm going to notice visually. I'm going to engage in the world visually. How does this display make me feel? Because I'm using different brain chemistry.
Mhm.
What we're trying to do is you have the event, you have the trauma event. What we're trying to do is get as much time in between the present moment where we're at right now and this event. And if the event is very, very close, that's what it's going to be.
Mhm.
Breathing, physical. A lot of people talk about going out and exercising. That's great, but maybe people don't like to exercise. What I'm saying is engage in the physical world. And
Mhm.
even if it is something as simple and basic as breathing and noticing the colors in the room and really, really noticing them, use that different brain biology.
Mhm.
Now, if the event is further along and you're dealing with PTSD, breaking that loop would be you're asking, your brain is asking all these questions. What if? Change the question in your brain. change the focus.
Mhm.
A trained mind, an untrained mind would experience trauma and ask themselves, why me? Why me? Why is this happening to me? This is so unfair. That's the untrained mind. The trained mind would say, what now? The trained mind is like the quarterback. You walk up to you're playing in the Super Bowl and you walk up to the offensive line, okay? And all of a sudden the defense shifts,
Yeah.
okay? I've wait a minute,
Yeah, now what do I do?
this was the play we're going to call, but now the defense has shifted. It's something totally different. But I have trained I have an entire playbook. You
Yeah.
know what? I'm going to run a belly option to the right because
Mm.
that's what's going to be appropriate. And that may not be the appropriate call, but the bottom line is I had a playbook. I had options, whereas the untrained mind, the person who hasn't trained, they have no options. They have no idea what they're going to do with this situation. Does that make any sense?
Oh, man, that was awesome. That was, like, perfect because now I'm gonna go to and well, I'm following your lead here on this dance because I was just thinking about plans, and this has happened a lot, like, during the winter. We're in Iowa when it's cold, and you make a plan and you know 3 months out you've booked this thing that you want to do and then this bad snowstorm happens
Mhm.
and all of a sudden you
Or
can't
you
see
get sick,
yeah you
and
can,
you
yeah,
throw up and you can't come to your podcast.
exactly so this happens all the time where we have plans. Humanity, we come up and we have a plan. Plans are great, but then something happens. Somebody's sick, the weather's bad, the dog, whatever it is. There's a million different excuses. And I used to think somewhat like this too, where it'd be like, you have an event cancel, another event cancel, another event cancel. Like, geez Louise, should I just stop and throw in the towel? Or I could pivot and move. And for example, we had plans that were a Reiki share we were going to do, you know, and our hearts were broke at time because we had planned this a month or two in advance, and then the weather was bad.
Oh, yes, yes,
But
yes.
what we had did, me and Chelsea went to, I think, Galena or something, or did something that day and had the most beautiful day together as a couple. And we needed that time alone together. So
Absolutely.
I didn't know that or not during the time. You know, I was excited for this Reiki share, but, you know, all father, you know, God, universe, whatever you want to call him or it is like, no, you need to spend time with your wife and go
Yes.
do this. So I wasn't upset. Yeah, I was upset for maybe a second, but then it's like, well, now what do you want to do? And we completely changed, went to this next event, and it was a beautiful, one of the most beautiful days I've ever had. And where I'm going with this is this happens daily, you know, yeah, daily to most individuals where you have a plan or I need to be here at this certain time and then you run late or this happens. Well, now what are you going to do? How are you going to move forward from that? You know, instead of being like, shit, I messed that up. I messed that question up. I did this wrong. And then you're back to that fear state where you're just constantly living in it versus just moving with it.
See, you had you had mentioned earlier about the importance of, monitoring your thoughts and being
Yeah.
aware of your thoughts. But we don't have to follow our thoughts.
Mhm.
Some of our thoughts, we're aware of our thoughts, but we don't have to follow them. We can
Right.
let them go.
Mhm.
Some of them don't deserve our attention. You had planned this incredibly cool event and then something happened and you weren't able to experience it.
Yeah.
Rather than holding on to that and then following that wasn't worth your attention.
Mhm.
You know what was? Spending time with your wife, going
Yeah.
to Galena.
Yeah.
That was worth your attention.
Yeah, you know, it's just so it's beautiful when you can catch yourself doing that though after the fact where it's like, man, you know, we could have sat at home and pouted or whatever, did something else, you know, but it's the mindset too and emotion,
Mhm.
you know, and I want to go into that emotion part of it because you were saying about feeling, you know, looking at this sign, what does that feeling bring to me? And I've always said, you know, like a crucial part of my healing journey was learning how to feel,
Yes.
you know, and I had shut my feelings down for most of my teenage, young adult life. I did not know how to
Mhm.
properly feel. You know, I was raised like men should be tough and, you know, you crying, no crying, and this and that, or you get hurt, no crying, and move forward, and put that in the closet, and that's it. So I wasn't feeling things, and then all of a sudden I learned how to feel, and I mean even shed some tears and started to cry, and I didn't really at that point. I was talking to you about my body shaking. My body's now releasing. It's tense, but it's going calm because
Mhm.
I had now learned how to feel through those emotions versus just think about them. Because there's something to be said about feeling,
Absolutely.
and what that can do. And we were talking about off air these bodies that we have. Our mental body, our feeling emotion body, the physical body, the athlete, the trainer, and is there any wisdom you can share to, let's say, a young lad like myself that has been stuck in those situations where, has been programmed to, well, I can't cry because, men don't cry, or that tough man syndrome. How does one begin to open up his feeling center, his heart, you know?
Well, and that's a long, long journey.
Yeah.
Uh, I think so much of it is learning yourself.
Mhm.
So the heart center, that the part of you that you're trying to bring out already exists in you.
Mhm.
It's a part of you. It just hasn't expressed itself yet, and you have to find that.
Mhm.
And you don't find that through outside distractions. You find that through your inner self.
Mhm.
Um, and I've often found that God or the universe or whatever it is, uh, always brings the things to our path that we need at that time to bring out what the world needs at that time. So, right, for 24 years, the version of Bill,
Mhm.
the police officer, that's what was manifesting. But also at the same time was the Reiki master, even though at the very beginning I had nothing to do with Reiki when I was
Right.
first a cop. I was just a young kid, wearing a uniform.
Mhm.
Um, but I think the importance is understanding that that exists inside of you,
Mhm.
and that version of you just needs to come out. And that's an individual journey with us all.
You're
I don't
right.
I don't think that there's any prescribed formula for
Mm.
that. You have to discover that for yourself. But I think the key is, actually, let me step back for a minute. You have to be comfortable with yourself. Whatever Carl Jung talks about, embracing our shadow self. That's the part of ourself that is, that's jealous. That's the ego. That's insecure. That's
Yeah.
the shadow self. And we often think that we have to suppress that and that we have to expel that. That's not what Carl Jung says. We need to integrate that because that has power and it's a part of ourselves. We can no longer, get rid of our shadow self. Then you can get rid of your liver. You can just
Y
decide, oh, I'm going to get rid of a lung today. It's a part of us. You
Yeah.
cannot, so we have to integrate it and we have to control it. We have to integrate it and manage it.
Mhm.
Um, uh, it's not that, a peaceful person is incapable of violence. They're capable of violence. It's they're choosing not to be violent.
Mhm.
You understand what I'm
I
saying?
do.
And that's a part of yourself that you have to uh grow,
Yeah.
bring out.
Yeah. Yeah, there isn't. I mean, I was just thinking about my journey and road, there isn't really one way, there isn't one path. There's how many paths, but I think a lot of people though tend to live that way where, they try to be the life of the party or
Mhm.
smiling and, I got the perfect everything.
That's
And
where they're deriving their happiness
yeah,
is through that.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And then they, like you said, you push that negativity away so much that eventually you gotta unlock it. You gotta say hello, and here it is.
Yep.
And that's even for myself, that was difficult for me to do, is to see and to honor some of my dark tendencies and
Mhm.
sides that maybe I don't like, and maybe some other people, um, friends or family don't like of me, but it's the moment that I decided to, uh let those come out of the closet and say hello and integrate them through my daily life, that I begin to notice myself change and just be more vast and whole,
Mhm.
whole with myself versus being one sided. And I can't help notice, I think a lot of people, even, we've been talking about PTSD. We could go into the veterans, the military,
Mhm.
that, they're over at war, and you see somebody that gets shot or killed, or maybe you have to shoot somebody to protect your platoon. And then they come back to the stateside,
Mm.
and, they don't want anybody to know that I killed a man or I killed a child because I had to protect my brothers and sisters. So they're hiding that certain aspect of themselves, and what that's doing is just eating the insides of them up. They're not
Mhm.
honoring that dark from them, because let's be real, we all have shadows or
Absolutely.
stuff that we're not proud of, or maybe, you know, things that, are embarrassing because of what the outside world portrays them to be. They paint us this picture of who we should be
Mhm.
versus ourself just learning to be our own self, our own
Mhm.
unique individual. So yeah, it's interesting to, I mean, now that I'm saying that with the soldier, is to honor that shadow self of ourselves. And I think that could
Well, that's a
actually unlock some more of the PTSD.
that's a good analogy that you just that you just gave because the soldier
Mhm.
uh in battle uh they have to be dialed in to what they're doing
Right.
in the battle, and that's not a pleasant thing that they're doing.
Mhm.
And then that's a version of them. There's a version of that in you.
Yeah.
Uh, but then you compartmental again. We were getting back to our
Yeah.
compartmentalization.
Looping it.
Then you that file has to be put away, and then and again this comes through training.
Mhm.
But that version of the soldier, they struggle with that because that's back home, we don't kill people.
Right.
That's illegal.
Yeah.
And that's yeah, that causes a great consternation in the head.
Right. Yeah, I was just thinking about, like, healing, and just, I mean, that's kinda been the backlog of the
Yeah,
story
yeah.
today, is healing. And I've had individuals or clients of mine ask me, like, "Have you fully healed?" Or like, "When is this healing stop? Like, are you, can I just be done?" Is it, and it's just like, after, I was thinking about that term, am I ever done healing? But it's, I could use now, I'm, apartment, putting them in certain compartments now. Not that, I'm can say that, yeah, I'm still going through this, but what I'm getting at is I'm opening up that filing cabinet, and they're going in there, and then I'm pulling it out, and it's easier to read now. I've already looked at that file 4 or 5 times, to where I pull that file out now.
Mhm.
It's a lot easier to read. So
Yeah.
it's easier to move through. No different than, we could use the soldier again,
Mhm.
after times of, he went through combat and had this bad event. He works through it, 4 years pass, he goes through another tour, has to go through it again, same similar situations, but this time it's a little easier for him to
Mhm.
process. Maybe this time he's showing the younger lads, the 18, 19-year-old guys, hey, I know what
Yes.
you're going through because I've been through this.
Mhm.
This is what helped me. So what I'm getting at is the part of healing and doing this stuff is, it's not necessarily the more we keep looking at those files that it gets easier. It's just, we're aware of them now. We
Mhm.
know how to do this now.
Mhm.
And
It's not unfamiliar.
correct.
I'm not looking at this file for the first time,
Yeah, it's not
you know?
seeing that motorcycle guy getting killed, and now what?
Well,
You
and knowing that, okay, if I'm feeling it, if I feel my mind spiraling in a certain way, again, through my mental training, I recognize, these aren't my thoughts.
Right.
I'm normally not thinking these things.
Yeah.
Then you break the circuit, break that crazy
Loop.
circuit, the loop.
Mhm. Wow. Yeah.
I mean,
Where are we gonna go now here? Because we had mind, a little bit of body,
yeah.
some emotion.
Mhm.
Do you wanna go
Hmm.
into some woo-woo stuff? Like, how do we bring the spiritual side now into this whole loop that we just created, you know?
Well, one mind, body, and spirit.
Mhm.
One analogy that I recently heard was um we think of a wave like in the ocean,
Mhm.
and the wave builds, it crests, it reaches its apex, and then it crashes into the beach, and then it disappears. The wave looks like an individual event, and it is it's cresting, it's this beautiful magnificent thing, and some people surf on them, and then it disappears. The the uh the, the wave is like our soul, in that we were once a part of the ocean. And then for a brief moment, when we were born, the wave starts, and then it crests, and then it reaches its peak. And that's, as we're living our life, and then the wave crashes back into the ocean and then disappears. That's our death. And then we return to the ocean.
Mm.
I think people live under the illusion that we're all separate, that the wave is separate from the ocean. The
Mhm.
wave is not separate from the ocean. The wave is the ocean. And you are not separate. You are the Justin Klein version of the ocean.
Mhm.
I am the Bill Pechman version of the ocean. This is my wave and this is your wave, but it's all the same thing. It looks different. It's maybe in a different part of the world, but it's all a part of the same ocean.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes total sense, you know?
And I think people, that way we were talking about ego.
Yeah.
Ego is, which wave is bigger.
Mhm.
It's all the same. It's all a part of the ocean.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And that ego, I mean, can be sneaky, you know?
Yeah.
And it's learning, I mean, because I believe without our ego, we would not be living right now, but it's also like, when you get into those difficult conversations, we talked off air, how does one react to them? You could, you know, well, my wave's bigger, like you said,
Yeah.
versus that, and you keep battling each other. But at what point do you just honor their wave and move forward with your wave? You know what I'm saying?
Well, and that's where the wisdom of the Stoics
Mm-hmm.
enters the conversation. My attention and my words have value,
Right.
and I'm going to share them with people that recognize that value. If someone isn't recognizing the value of my presence or my words, or just, you know whatever,
In general.
uh, then, since I only have a limited amount of time on this planet,
Mm-hmm.
I want to invest that in someone that is, in a situation that is going to appreciate that. Now, what happens when somebody doesn't? You're not going to make that same time investment. I'm still present with them. I'm still talking, but I'm not sharing as much of myself with them because they haven't
Right.
earned the they haven't understood the value of what we're sharing.
Right. That makes sense.
Actually, I kind of went off on a way bit of a tangent
No,
there.
that makes sense here. Um, yeah, I was just
Um,
thinking about the the police days to Reiki Master Bill. Um, when you start with some of your students, let's say in Reiki level 1, um, each Reiki master has got their own different way of teaching,
Absolutely.
and the more that we keep bonding and talking,
Yeah.
I sense and I get to see how important not only is, you know, spirituality to you, but also just embodying the human experience, the
Absolutely.
mind, and
Mhm.
connecting that all together. And I appreciate that. For a new person out there seeking Reiki, do you have any words of wisdom that you would to get them curious about it? Because most people in today's world, at least when I get approached about it, they think of it as woo woo or spiritual. But again, I want to honor you for the way you come at it, because you do bring into every aspect, the mental body, the emotional body, and make it more 3D, because we are living here on Earth, and
Absolutely.
it's all not about being out in the clouds in the sky. So if you were to, you know, intrigue somebody, what advice or words?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is, find somebody that you can have a relationship with,
Mhm,
because that is absolutely paramount when you're walking your spiritual journey or your Reiki journey. Find out, talk to not just one. Don't If someone suggests somebody to you, absolutely, like a Reiki master,
mhm,
get to know them though first.
right,
For me, the first several Reiki class sessions for me with a Reiki level 1 student is just a conversation. We're getting to know each other. I mean, yes,
mm,
we're talking about cool spiritual things and all of that, but we're getting to know each other because it's a
mhm,
relationship. It is so vital that you feel comfortable connecting on a very, very spiritually intimate level with somebody.
mhm,
And you have and that takes time as well. That's why, generally speaking, if someone wants to walk a Reiki journey, I personally think it's a good idea to, speak with everybody, but get your attunements with one person, with one
mhm,
master, so you
mhm,
kind of get that,
right,
because it's a relationship,
mm,
especially with a master attunement. You have to have a relationship with somebody before you
right,
would even consider doing a master attunement with somebody.
right,
So somebody that you're going to feel comfortable with having a relationship with for a while,
yeah,
and to be able to talk about non-Reiki related things, and to be
yeah,
able to have fun with, because
mhm,
it's all about that relationship. And once you kind of and your gut will tell you, I always say your gut instinct is never going to lie to you.
mhm,
And uh trust that gut instinct. And if you feel somebody that you're connecting with, then get to know them as a person
right,
before a master. Who
mhm,
is the person that they are?
right. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I was just thinking about, for like me, when I was going through my path, it was just, you know, you hear some things and you're like, God, is that real? Like energy, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
And then you experience it. I think once an individual, at least that was my case, where I got to experience, my hands doing something that
Yeah.
I didn't know that they were doing. And I'm trying to control them not to do that. Like, why are you doing this? And then I'm like, okay, this is real. This can't be made up, And I think there is a lot of that out there with people is seeing is believing. I say that all the time, like seeing is believing.
Yeah.
But then when you believe in something so fully, now you're seeing it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's interesting,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
It's a, you know, think of it as a journey.
It is.
You've and Reiki, you may think that you have decided to study Reiki, but it's Reiki that's come to you. It's your higher self
Mm,
speaking to you. It's
yeah,
it's 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 you on the other side saying, "Okay, Bill, it's
yeah.
it's time to walk this path." And
Mhm.
then once that starts to happen, you just go with the flow of the river. That's the key. Don't fight the river.
Yeah.
That's where we get into trouble.
Yeah.
Go with the flow of the river,
Mhm.
and the river will provide you the right Reiki master will come in. I think I mentioned this on our first podcast. Ted and Lydia, they
Mhm.
were my Reiki master teachers.
Mm.
They were so vital on my journey.
Journey.
It could have only been them.
Mhm.
Only them.
Mhm.
Nobody else.
Yeah.
And I could go into all kinds of details about that, but
Yeah.
they were the right ones for me.
When you know, you know.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so I would tell the prospective student that
Mhm.
once you get that feeling, go with it.
Right, right. I didn't know. I was like thinking about, we've talked a lot about the mental, the brain and even putting certain files where they should go. Um, but even like, like I go to like all the veterans out there, and what they're doing if they're going to the VA and, seeking help mentally, but like spiritually, are they getting any guidance? And like, I wonder what that would do if they're not like having a Reiki master there, in a VA office. Have you
Mhm.
heard of this or no?
No, I think um, one avenue to you have to have a therapist who understands the all therapists understand the importance of having a physical body with your mental health.
Mhm.
Um, but then some of them don't understand that there's the spiritual element as well.
Right.
And that's the hugely individual journey.
Mhm.
So the psychologist can give you verbal therapy. The psychiatrist can prescribe medications. Which, if there's a chemical imbalance in your brain, I mean, our brains are computers; they're biological computers.
Mhm.
And if our consciousness originates from our higher selves, and our brains are merely the conduit through which our consciousness flows into the world.
Right.
um, if the brain is broken, the consciousness is not going to
Gonna
flow. It
flow.
would be like, imagine the world's best musician,
Mhm.
and they step onto the stage and they pick up their instrument and they begin playing, but the instrument is broken, or it's out of tune,
Yeah.
or there's something really wrong with your instrument. They can be the best musician in the world, but the instrument is broken. It can't flow through the instrument.
Mhm.
So as an example, there are times when, people need medication because of the biological brain biology. We went off on a little bit of a tangent there again, didn't we?
I think so. That's fine. I mean, what we're doing, we're still
I-
looping it all back with the
yeah,
brain and,
yeah.
you know yeah.
Where was I?
Well, we were talking about the VA office and,
Oh, yes,
the spiritual,
yeah,
bringing the spirit side
yeah,
into there,
yes,
and your thoughts on that,
yeah. And so circling back to that,
Yeah.
that is that is simple biology. Whether it's your verbal therapy that is, giving you the structure your brain needs, or if it's
Right.
medication, that's science. But the spirit is something totally different. We've talked about the red road.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's where the individual has to find their spiritual journey, and it can be nothing but their own journey. They
Mhm.
can't adopt somebody else's. It won't work.
Right.
It has to be their own individual journey for that
Yeah.
to work.
Yeah. That's wise words there.
I can't
No.
take your ways to make and
Yeah.
maybe they are. Maybe
Right.
maybe we have the exact same ways, but
Yeah.
it has to be my way.
Right. No, and I'm just saying in general with somebody walking their path is that, like, at least for me, even with my alcohol addiction, my wife tried countless times, like, Justin, you need to quit drinking. You need to quit
Yep.
drinking. And same with other family and friends. I didn't want to quit drinking.
Mhm.
They're trying to make me walk what they think is their yellow brick road. It's not
Yes,
mine.
yes.
But there was a time where it was like, you know what? I've had enough of this shit.
Mhm.
I'm ready to move on.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and that's when it worked and when
Mhm.
it stuck was like it was what I wanted. It was my own path, no different than you're talking about with the VA, or
Mhm.
some of those guys. Like, I think we, as humans, we see a miracle happen or we see something amazing happen. I mean, we could use my addiction, like being sober now for almost 4 years. Like, holy cow, that's amazing. Now there's another addict on the road, and it's like, well, how do I do this? How do
Mhm.
I could give him a step-by-step playbook that I went through, but it's not going to work for him because we're all unique and different individuals,
Yeah.
so it's an interesting journey that one just needs to find the courage, um, the mustard, the will, the power to find themselves, you know?
Well, and I always go back to the basics.
Mhm.
Um, what is it that brings you joy? What is it that brings you genuine joy and happiness?
Mhm.
And start from there.
Yeah.
And if it's a particular belief, a particular practice, if that's bringing you, that element of joy and spirit,
Right.
then you have to trust that.
Before we wrap up this show
Yes.
here, I do have a question.
Yes.
What are the most common, we're going to go back to just interacting with police officers. If I
Yes.
was to
Yes.
get pulled over for
Mm-hmm.
doing something
Yeah.
stupid, what are the most common misinterpreted accusations humans believe about our police force?
Well, I think there's a whole bunch.
Yeah. Let's go over,
But
yeah.
we'll just get some of the real basic ones.
In your
We could have
opinion.
an entire podcast
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
So let's start with a traffic stop. We'll make it
Yeah.
really easy. The thing to remember is, when a police officer pulls you over, in your mind, you're wondering, gosh, was I speeding? Did I run the stop sign? Whatever it might be.
Shit.
Exactly.
You
Yeah,
know?
exactly. So you've got all of these things going on, in your mind.
Mhm.
The police officer, and you're thinking, oh my God, am I going to get a ticket? Am I going to get a warning? What's going to happen? Is he going to impound my car?
Mhm.
But the police officer is only thinking of one thing. I want to survive this traffic stop
Mhm.
alive. I'm not talking mentally. I'm not talking spiritually. I'm talking about physically. My goal is just to simply survive this traffic stop. Now, in your mind, you're not going to cause any problems, but in the officer's mind, I know absolutely nothing about you.
Right.
Did you just literally 2 hours ago commit a murder? And you're dressed fine, you're in this good car, but this murder has not been discovered yet. Okay? Now, the cops are pulling you over for speeding. Okay? So in the cop's mind, ooh, I've got a speeder. But in your mind, oh my God, the cops have just busted me. They know all about the murder. I am so busted and I'm going to go to prison for the rest of my life, but I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory.
Mhm.
The cop doesn't know that.
Right.
So the cop has to treat each traffic stop as a potentially use of deadly force.
Wow.
Um, so when you're interacting with the police officer, just keep in mind that they're thinking, and even though you may not look like a threat to them, you're not a threat to them until you drive away and the incident is over.
Right.
So number one, just keep in mind that it's a dangerous world and the cops are on the front line of that dangerous world.
Yeah.
And then the other thing to keep in mind is the unfortunate truth with humans in general. Some people are just simply assholes,
Mhm.
and there are cops that are just assholes. And let's say that 10% of all police officers are assholes. Well, those are the cops that are going to be out there, writing a million tickets and, doing all of those things.
Mm.
Most of the time, it's going to be a regular guy or gal, regular person.
Mhm.
When you get pulled over by the police, there's only two options that are going to happen. You're either going to get a ticket or you're not going to get a ticket. That's all that can happen. Well, If the officer walks up to the car and they have already decided that they're going to give a ticket because the speed was too excessive or whatever it is, you're just going to get a ticket. And that's where stoicism comes in, and you just accept the reality of it. This is just, whether you agree or not, and we'll get back to that in just a second, but
Mhm.
whether you agree or not, that's the outcome. If the officer is not sure about giving you a ticket, because he's a human being just like everybody else, and you walk up and now you're aggressive and you're calling the officer every name in the book and insulting the officer, which, by the way, they've heard you can't think of an insult that they haven't heard. Okay. Trust me.
I
You
know.
know, I know.
Yeah.
And there's been many, many times when, an officer will walk up on a driver with no intention of writing a ticket, but guess what ends up happening? They get a ticket because the person was absolutely rude and disrespectful.
Yeah.
Now, if you feel, and this is actually very, very important, this is actually probably one of the big important ones. If you feel you've been wronged by the police, that's okay. If the officer is rude or disrespectful or way over the line with things, don't deal with it at the time. Call his supervisor.
Mhm.
If it's something where he needs to be sued, sue the officer. If if you feel that the citation is incorrect, take it to court and fight the citation in court.
Mm.
Don't do it at the point of contact.
Yeah.
So if you want to contest the ticket, great. That's what the court system is for. Do it in court.
Mhm.
If the officer was rude and absolutely obnoxious,
Mhm.
report him to his supervisor. If he does something that is way out of line, contact an attorney and sue him, but do it not at the point of contact.
Right.
Because there's so many different elements involved with that can just make a situation bad.
Right. I mean, it goes back to, I think you said right in the beginning, am I going to get out of here alive?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
to be honest, I've never thought of that when
Yeah.
I've got pulled over, ever. I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking, great, what's this prick want now?
Mm-hmm.
Like I wasn't even speeding. You gonna give me a 6 mile an hour ticket, not thinking in his shoes, like, yeah, I could have robbed a bank or whatever or murdered somebody. And he's just wanting to do his job, get home to his family and kids, So it's important to think about that.
Well, as an example, let's use a different example.
Right.
Let's say a non-traffic stop example. Let's
Yeah.
say you're walking. It's 9 o'clock at night, and you're meeting some friends at a location, and you're walking downtown. And all of a sudden, a police officer comes up to you and says, "Excuse me, sir. Can I talk to you?"
Mm.
You have no idea why the officer is wanting to talk to you. It may be because he just has a question about, did you see something around the corner? Or it could be, you know what? We just got a call 5 minutes ago of an assault that occurred at Big Joe's bar.
Mm-hmm.
And the suspect just beat the heck out of the waitress. And he's a white male. He's got kind of a beard with short hair. And he's got tattoos on his arms, and
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that you're the bad guy, but the officer has a right to check it out because he has reasonable suspicion to believe that you are the suspect. It doesn't mean you're
Yeah.
going to jail, but the officer is obligated to check it out. Now, how you behave at that, now you don't know why the officer's talking to you.
Right.
Now, if you're very, very fidgety and you're putting your hands in your pockets and you're looking around and you're looking very, very nervous, the officer's, senses are going to go up.
Mm.
Whether the officer asks for it or not, offer your ID. That solves so many problems. Give your ID. And if you don't have your ID, officer, how can I cooperate?
Mm.
Even if the officer is being totally, rude,
or whatever.
because
yeah.
we don't know what the circumstances are.
Right.
That officer could have just, this happened to me many times, where I go from one call where I'm literally doing CPR on a 3-year-old child that's going to die.
Yeah.
And I'm doing CPR on that child. And then I'm at a, call, where there's a domestic some horrible thing happens,
Mhm.
and then I pull somebody over for speeding, and then that person spouts out because life is not fair and I'm just an evil cop trying to harass them, you know.
Yeah.
I may not be as friendly to that person after that set of circumstances.
Right, right.
You know?
No, I get it. But I think it's important to, because I mean, at least in our area of the world, is a little different than like, a bigger city where there's violence, or a different country where there's wars going on. Ours is very, not to say there's no violence or harm here. It's just we're in a safer community, but to keep in mind, change though, it's different. But
Yeah, yeah.
I was getting at just to be mindful when you're getting pulled over
Yes, yes,
of
yes.
what's going through the police officer's mind,
Absolutely.
not just your mind, and I think if we, go about that in any circumstance in life in general, being aware of
Yeah,
somebody else, what they're going through, and just like, oh gosh, what they do to me, your outcome's going to be
absolutely.
way better. So,
Well, and again, and it's kind of like interacting with anybody, so many people are mirrored reflections of what we're projecting to them,
mhm,
if not everybody, but generally speaking, if you come across with a peaceful demeanor, uh
mhm,
most of the time people will reflect that. If
100%.
you come off,
Yeah.
slamming away at somebody,
Yeah.
you're going to get resistance.
Yeah, I think about it when I was a teenage boy, just driving around, tearing up the town and being
Yeah.
stupid, and then you get pulled over and it's like, what did I do? And
What
it's
did
like,
I do?
yeah,
Yeah. What did I
it's
do?
like, what am I doing? But now it's like if I get pulled over, it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, officer. I
Yeah.
might have been
Yeah.
going 7, 8 over. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Mm.
You know.
Well, just a little cool something to think about, and
Yeah.
and again, things probably have changed, since I retired, 2015, a lot can
Yeah.
change, but if you just think of when you're on the highway, if you think 9 you're fine, 10 you're mine. If you're going about 8 and 9 over the limit, okay, that might get their attention, but
Mm,
probably not. But
yeah.
once you start breaking into the 10s and the
10.
11s over,
Uh-huh.
then you're going to get their attention. So
9.
9 you're fine, 10 you're mine.
Got it. Those are some great words there, Bill. From police officer
Yeah.
Bill.
Again, things change. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
back in my day, couldn't have a beard,
Yeah.
no tattoos below the, below
Yeah,
the,
for sure. Everything's
elbow.
changing. Well, with everything that we've
Yeah.
talked about, is there something you feel like you want to get out to the public? We covered quite a bit of different uncharted ground, but I think it was very, very awesome, mindful lessons in there. How to cope with something tragic or something that's, you've witnessed that you don't know how to work with. Is there something, based on our conversation today, you feel like you want to touch on a little more or
Well, I guess I would just conclude with what we talked about. We talked
mm,
about a lot of different things,
yeah,
but that's really just the tip of the iceberg.
right.
If you're experiencing these sort of things, uh, uh, you know, look into some of the things that we talked about. But there are so many more different aspects to all of this,
Mhm.
and uh, I guess, yeah, that there's so much more to
Right.
PTSD. And there's our childhood.
Yeah.
Of course, we think of the experiences at work and that sort of thing, but
Mhm.
PTSD comes to us through any number of different areas. It's not just the Hollywood, war stuff.
Mhm.
It's the relationship that the
Yeah.
abusive relationship, and I'm not talking necessarily physical abuse. I'm
Or just
talking about
words.
psychological
Yeah.
abuse.
Yelling.
Exactly.
Mhm.
PTSD is a PTSD is just like your spirituality. It's
Mhm.
highly individual,
Mhm.
and everybody's going to experience it differently.
Right.
And it's a journey, but it's a journey that can be overcome. I know that from myself. I mean, I was
Mhm.
a street cop for 24 years, and that's
Mhm.
24 years of bad things that are stored right up in there. but it's surmountable. You can work through that. You can end the day with a smile and a purpose and meaning and happiness, but you have to prepare your mind for that. You have to train for that. Um, you can't expect to win the Super Bowl if
Yeah.
you haven't trained all
Yeah.
year to prepare for it.
Yeah, training the mind and to think about too, I mean, 24 years as a police officer, I'm sure you have some rough stories. But then you look at being retired for what, 11 years now?
Mhm.
And the life you're living now.
Oh,
Look at
absolutely.
the love of the life you've met.
Yes.
The things you're building together, and who knows what the future holds for you
Mhm.
and your wife. But what I'm getting at is, yes, you may have witnessed, and even, a guy that went through a terrible childhood. There is always a future. There is always tomorrow.
Yes,
There
yes.
is always something that you can create to make your life a
Mhm.
better, almost perfect life in your eyes. We don't have to just sit and dwell on yesterday. You know.
So, along those lines, and to your point,
Mm-hmm.
when you built this beautiful, beautiful
Yeah.
room,
Mm-hmm.
it required materials,
Mm-hmm.
wood and nails and electricity and all kinds of different things. When you had all of those materials sitting outside
Mm-hmm.
on the driveway, it didn't build itself.
Right.
You had to do the work.
Right.
And that is the key. And Ellen talks about this all the time.
Yeah.
You have to do the work.
Right.
And the building isn't going to build itself.
Yeah.
And it
It's.
can only be built one nail at a time. It takes time, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
time and patience.
Yes, repetition, resilience,
Yes.
all of that is just it's wonderful, Gotta do it though, because I mean, I say this a lot and we joke around with friends of mine too about, raising kids and whatever, that we have everything at our disposal right now.
Yes.
Not quite everything, but almost
Right
everything.
here in that phone.
Yeah,
Everything's in that phone.
yes, and food and
Mhm.
everything. So we have to be, I'm going to go back to, yeah, resilience. You have to be resilient and mindful and everything, just to work on yourself and not just to always take the easy road
Mhm.
because it's right there.
Yeah.
That's not getting you anywhere. It reminds me of like almost like cheating on a test.
Or
It's right.
cheating at the gym.
Yes, cheating at the gym. I'm going to take all this. That you
Mm.
you have to go through the steps and watch yourself. If you are, I think we talked about that. If you're doing it for somebody, like, well, I'm just doing this to my looks good, so maybe I can get the girl or whatever, but it's not for me. That's only going to last so long, and I think you said that's very what did you say? Short.
Well, it's
Um
very fragile. Yeah, it's
Fragile. There
very,
you go.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to last where if we keep building and working and building, I mean, pretty soon you got a rock that just
Mhm.
won't move. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, dude,
Yeah.
this was amazing.
Oh, I
Yeah.
always cherish our time together, my man.
Well, yeah, just the places we went. I think there's a lot of valuable information in today's show. I know we're going to be doing this again because we kind of talked off
Oh
air.
yeah,
We got
yeah.
lots of ideas here. So, and if I can't find any guests or I have trouble finding somebody, I got Bill in my back pocket
We got
here.
Bill. Bill's always going to be there,
Yes, yes.
and unless he's horribly ill, then he won't be there.
That's right.
Molly was
Oh,
sick too.
yeah.
Yeah, she was
Oh,
down to the same thing.
that time
that
of the
was
year.
crazy. I
Yeah.
know, it was crazy.
Bill, though, I do a couple last things for you. If people want to reach out to you
Mm.
with your words of wisdom you shared today, where can our listeners find you at?
Well, Ellen and I
Yeah.
recently started our website, or we have a website now. It's still we still have things to do with it, but you can contact us at our website with either to schedule an appointment with Reiki, and then Ellen has got a whole bunch of services as well.
Mm-hmm.
To contact our website would be www.innersanctum.life.
Okay.
And then my personal email address is elbj 133 at gmail.com.
Perfect.
So at the website, you could contact, but then you could schedule an appointment,
Mm.
or if you just want to contact me,
Right.
and just whatever, you can do either way, but the email would work as well.
Awesome.
So yeah,
Yes, I'll have that in the show notes to our listeners too, so they can click on a link or whatever, so it's easy for
yeah,
you.
absolutely.
But yeah, Bill, thank you for today.
My pleasure.
This was fun, and gosh, man, so wise.
Again, I appreciate our time together.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning into today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And remember, hit the like and subscribe button. And if you have any questions or anything, don't hesitate, reach out to us.